Welcome to the continued podcast adventures of Superhero Speak.
But I think many of the people that love this character and that love superheroes in general have used these stories as inspiration to say, you know what, I'm going to do something good in the world. I'm going to make a difference like my hero when I was a kid.
That is my fondest memory of it, because when you're doing comic books, you want them to affect people.
Right.
You want people to care. You want to strike emotions. And I knew that Clone Saga was striking a lot of emotions.
Can you imagine Pulp Fiction starring Goofy and Mickey Mouse?
I can totally imagine that.
I'm sure somebody's written that one too.
Quarter pounder with cheese in France, Mickey? What? Boy, ale with cheese, Mickey. Yeah. I can totally.
See?
I would watch the hell out of that movie.
Yes, I gladly sacrifice that my progeny to you, almighty Marvel beast.
But Neil Adams is somewhere going, it's my time.
How do you measure success?
Okay, ready when you are.
Oh, no problem. John and Dave, Superhero Speak here at the Great Philadelphia.
Which is which?
19.
I'm Dave.
Okay.
I'm the nice one.
Okay.
I'm John.
Okay.
So we're here with the one and only Christopher Priest.
And thank God for that.
If for people who don't know, he's worked on Spider-Man, Black Panther, Falcon. You were the first African American editor over at Marvel, correct?
Yes, correct.
So you've been in the business for a minute, as the kids say.
Yep.
So a question I usually like to ask writers first off, is writing something you always wanted to do?
Absolutely. When I was 10 years old, I asked my mom for a typewriter.
Wow.
And she thought I meant like a toy or something. That
right.
You tap the keys and bubbles come out. And I was like, no, a real typewriter. And I had to really talk her into it. So for my 10th birthday, she bought me a beige Royal, that was the brand, Royal manual typewriter, a little portable typewriter.
Right.
And I typed in that thing until I killed it.
Wow.
And then, of course, my sister wanted a typewriter. She never used it. She just wanted it because I got one.
Yeah.
She just put hers in the closet. She never used it. So after I killed mine, I got hers out of the closet and killed hers. And at 10 years old, I wrote my first novel. It was a Batman novel.
Wow.
Batman and Robin adventures and so forth. It was 64 pages long and or something like that. I have no idea what happened to it. But I knew all along that I wanted to be a writer. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And work in comics too, or
yeah, I think at some point I don't know if I wanted to write comics or if I wanted to be. I didn't have a word for it, but I wanted to be the person who hires the writers and the artists.
Okay.
So it wasn't until I was much older that I learned that position is called editor. That I wanted to be the sort of creative. And in fact, the title editor is kind of a misnomer because comic book editors, they're not really editors. Like a book editor, you bring your novel in and the editor helps to shape it into something. Right. A comic book editor performs more like a producer for a TV show.
Right.
Where they have a franchise. They have Wonder Woman. They're in charge of Wonder Woman. So they're responsible for maintaining that franchise, and they have certain set of standards and so forth. And then they put the creative team together, the artist and the writer and the colorist and the letterer.
Right.
So, calling editors it's always been wrong. They're not editors, they're producers. So that's basically what I wanted to do.
Yeah. So you have a couple of Black Panther posters on your table here. Obviously you're responsible for creating quite a few of the characters in Black Panther. How did it feel to see them on the big screen?
It was surreal.
Yeah.
And even to come to a convention and see people walking around dressed as characters that I created, while they have no idea whatsoever who I am or the fact that I created those characters,
right,
is a little surreal. But it was very gratifying, and I was so happy with the film. And I went to the premiere, and I'm sitting in the theater waiting for the movie to start, and all I'm doing is I'm praying to God, please don't suck. Please don't suck. Because I would be so embarrassed,
Right.
But by that time, it was Marvel, so you had a good chance it wasn't going to suck.
That's true. But you never know.
Right.
Yeah.
And I told Nate Moore, who was executive producer, when they were developing the film, I consulted on the film, and I said, well, look, if I could give you one piece of advice, don't blow it, because this is not like, Iron Man or Banana Man or whatever, where you have this certain constituency. Some people like Ant-Man, some people like Spider-Man or whatever the story is. This is Black Panther.
Right.
All of Black America are watching.
Yeah.
Yes.
You don't want to screw this up.
It was hyped up for that. It was
so I was so proud of the film and so absolutely relieved that Ryan Coogler, he really had a great vision for it and a great ear. It's not just the visuals, it's the sounds, it's the music, it's how he put it all together. And that wonderful script from Mr. Cole, Robert Joe Cole. It all just came together. I could not have been happier. I was thrilled.
Well, here's something we haven't heard before. So you said you were brought in as a consultant, right? So what?
I don't know. Brought in. I got a phone. I got a few phone calls, and we had a few phone conferences. No one was bringing me anywhere. But go ahead.
But they did contact you and ask for your opinion on certain things, right?
Yes.
Like what is that? What is that like? And it's nice to hear that Marvel is still, even though they're coming out with these big blockbusters, I think unlike DC, they're actually talking to the authors that have written those characters, know their personalities and everything, and actually asking them questions and getting input from them.
Well, I think a couple things. One is that Hollywood has finally figured out with the Christopher Nolan films, the Batman trilogy.
Right.
Yeah.
It finally occurred to them, the more seriously they take the subject matter, the more money they make.
Mm-hmm.
And that every time they go at it in an uninformed way, or when they treat it like farce, like Green Hornet, they lose money.
Yeah.
So at some point they went, oh, wait, we need to take this more seriously. Okay, so like the Wonder Woman movie, it could have been very frivolous. It could have been the Linda Carter TV show. Yes. But they decided, look, let's take this legend and really take it seriously. So with Marvel films, it's not unusual for them to consult. I know they consulted Chris Claremont. I know they consulted Steve Englehart. Awesome. So I know that these people had a voice in it. Whether they use our ideas or take our advice, that's a different story.
Right.
But at least you got the phone call. Now, quick story about Black Panther is so I'm talking to Nate Moore, the executive producer, and he says, well, for the villain, we're thinking of using Man-Ape, who became M'Baku right. in the film, the from the gorilla tribe. And he said, but when he said Man-Ape, I was like, excuse me? And he said, Man-Ape. I said, I'm sorry, say again? Man-Ape. And I went, did you say Man-Ape? And he goes, yes, Man-Ape. Said, there's a character named Man-Ape? And he goes, yeah, you wrote him. I wrote a character named Man-Ape? I had forgotten all about the character.
Wow.
Okay. It was the silliest thing I've heard. Man-Ape. I wrote a So, after I got the phone, I went downstairs and I went digging through the box. And sure enough, I wrote him. He was right there. Man-Ape. And I thought, well, you don't want to put Man. That's not going to work. It's going to be right. And then it's the way it was so brilliant the way they used the character that M'Baku ends up like stealing the show almost.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it was
just brilliant the way they used it, you know?
So, I mean, that's another thing. In today's world, people have a tendency to go back and look at those things that were created back in the 60s and the 70s.
Right. Yeah.
With today's filter, and they call them offensive or whatever. What do you think would have happened if they used Man-Ape instead of M'Baku in the movie?
Well, I think the trend for the Marvel cinematic universe, they're taking those cues from the Marvel Netflix universe, where they're just not even mentioning the names of some of these villains.
Right.
Like even in Iron Man 2, Whiplash shows up. Not once do they call him Whiplash.
Yeah.
That's true.
So that's kind of, and I think that's kind of interesting because it allows this new audience to access these characters. Now us comic book fans, and I'm just as big a geek as anybody else. We know what we're looking at. We know that's Man-Ape up there.
Yeah.
So, but I thought it was wise that what they did with the Black Panther film is they broadened the concept.
Yes.
If they had strictly shot my Black Panther, they told the story of the prince who becomes king. It's a very universal story.
Right.
So this is Black Panther's first day on the job in the film.
Mm-hmm.
My Black Panther has been king for at least 10 or 15 years because, I took over after Don McGregor's reign. So, he already had all this history. And my Black Panther was very taciturn and he's very dark. He's like, I'm Batman. He's that guy.
Right.
If they had shot that version of the character, it would have played more like a Christopher Nolan Batman film, and the audience would have been much more narrow.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It wouldn't have been as broad or as family friendly as what they came up with. So I thought it was a very wise decision to put a little bit of Mr. McGregor, put a little bit of me, put a little bit of Ta-Nehisi Coates, put a little bit of Reginald Hudlin, a sprinkle of Roy Thomas, and put him in there.
Cool. How many characters have you created? Because I know.
What for the Black Panther?
Well, for the Black Panther and in other comics.
Oh man, I don't really have a database. I've been writing
that
comics.
Many.
Remember, he didn't remember that he creted Mayonnaise.
Yeah.
So.
Well.
No, I didn't create Mayonnaise.
No.
I built out his backstory.
Right.
Yeah, I named his tribe the Jabari tribe after my friend Jabari because it was late at night and I need to call him something. And I was like, Jabari.
That's how the naming process works. Okay.
Yeah. But over the years, I've created most any comic book writer has created dozens of characters. I couldn't tell you how many characters I've created. Just a bunch of them.
So when we walked up, there was actually a young fan here, and he was saying he was a writer. So what kind of advice do you give young people who want to get into writing and maybe get into writing comic books?
I try to discourage them. I try to tell them, find another occupation somewhere. Make a better choice, young people. It's tough because writing in general is taking a real beating because not a lot of people read anything. We're really, and each successive generation, they've got these little screens in their back pocket, and everything is video now. Now, if you want to get into writing something, write screenplays, write teleplays, write things like that. The comic book business is just it's gotten smaller and smaller over the years.
Yeah.
It's incredibly difficult to break in. If you're an artist, like I do some music on the side, and I try to encourage singers to learn how to play, if at all possible, learn how to play piano so they can accompany themselves. So you're not constantly at the mercy of trying to find someone to play for you.
Right.
If you can draw your own comics, you have a 10 times better odds of breaking in because it takes a lot less time for an editor to look at art samples. In order for an editor to evaluate your writing, they have to read your script, which means they have to find the time to do it. And what's happened in the business is that over the years, they've shrunk their budget so much that editors have to do less with more. I'm sorry. Let's try it again. Editors have to do more with less.
Yeah.
So whereas when I was coming along, I might edit 4 or 5 books. Now editors are editing 10 books, 11 books.
Yeah.
They have less resources. They have no time to read your script or to really focus on enough to bring you into the business. So it's really tough for writers. Artists, it's a little easier. Incredibly tough for writers to break in.
Does that mean that there's less good stuff on the market if they're doing that much, these editors, and they don't have time to go through the time that they had before to go through something methodically and read these entire scripts and figure out, directions and stuff that, if they have to do that much, is the quality going down because they're overworked now?
Well, unfortunately, quality and what's good, these are all subjective terms. So, that's why there's such a variety of product out there because there's a lot of people, there's one editor, I won't mention his name, very prominent editor, who really didn't like my work, and Joe Quesada had put me up for, this is years ago, this is like 10 years ago, Joe Quesada had put me up for a project, and the editor who was on the project, I did not have a relationship with the editor. So I called the editor up and I said, look, I don't want you to feel pressure, that Joe is advocating for me to take this project.
Right.
If you're not really feeling me, let's have that conversation, and I'll tell Joe, look, back off the guy, that kind of thing.
Right.
And it wasn't the easiest conversation to have, but he appreciated my honesty. I appreciated his honesty, and he wanted to go in a different direction and use someone else. And I just told Joe, well, look, don't don't make an issue of it. Because the editor, he doesn't really like my work, but there's a lot of editors who do like my work.
Right.
So some do, some don't. Hopefully you find enough people who do like you to keep you employed.
Well, what was the most fun that you've had writing?
I'm kind of having it now on Vampirella, which really? Sounds like I'm hyping Vampirella, like I'm hyping this new book that's coming out in the summer. But I just, I was sitting here with the executive editor yesterday.
I was trying to remember why we talked about you recently on the podcast, and it was because they announced that you were working at Vampirella.
So Joe Reibolt, the executive editor of Dynamite, was sitting here yesterday, and I kept telling him, I said, I'm just really paranoid because I'm having so much fun. I figure any day now I'm going to get the phone call. Okay, knock it off, because you've gone too far now. Because when we launched Black Panther, the Black Panther purists, the legion of Don McGregor fans,
right, really
didn't like what we were doing. Because, we threw this humor into the book, and we gave them all these gadgets, and we made them darker, and, ooh, I'm Batman, and they didn't like that.
Right.
I think people who like my work, who follow me over to Dynamite, I think that they will be able to process my Vampirella easier than the hardcore legion of Vampirella fans who've been reading her for 30 years, because we're doing to Vampirella in some way, some respects, things that are similar to what we did with Black Panther. We're throwing some humor into it. We're changing the angles around a little bit. So it's a very different take on Vampirella that some people are not going to like. So I figured sooner or later they're gonna call me up and go, okay, you're killing us here. Go back to the regular, let's get back to basics with her. So we'll see what happens.
I was going to say, she's been around for a long time. So
me too.
I walked into that one. So how did you get involved in that? That's kind of a different genre.
I was at New York Comic Con, and the publisher, Nick Barucci, had been trying to email me and trying to call me for a while, and I wasn't trying to ignore Nick. I'm just busy, I'm traveling. So I'm at the New York Comic Con, and I feel his hand on my shoulder, and I turn around, and and it's Count Dracula, and Nick kind of looks like a vampire, and I flipped around, and I went, oh, it's Nick, and I went, oh my God, he's cornered me, and I didn't know what he wanted, and he said Vampirella, and I just kind of stopped in my tracks, and I went, huh. Because the question is always, like when DC called me up and offered me Deathstroke.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
My first question is, what could I say with this character that is unique or different or hasn't been explored yet?
Right.
So when he said Vampirella, I considered it kind of, I'm an ordained minister. Why am I writing this half-naked vampire, running around?
Yeah.
So so I feel like, that's the question. Can, a person of faith, a conservative person of faith, write this half-naked vampire and say something positive with her that, is not in direct conflict with the things that he believes. So there's a reason why Nick approached me. I don't really know what it is. You have to ask Nick. But so far, having a blast.
Cool. So it's actually a good story to lead into our question we normally like to wrap up on, which is, how do you measure success?
Wow. Wow. I don't have that one loaded up in my hip pocket. I was going to say rent money. Success is rent, but, Larry Hamill, who's down there somewhere, Larry was my mentor for a long time.
Yeah.
He's the one, I worked, we shared a phone booth at Marvel for about 5 or 6 years.
Right.
And he taught me most everything I know. And there was one time where we really sacrificed to get a book out on deadline. And once we got the book out, we turned it over to Jim Shooter, who was the editor-in-chief. Jim takes the book and goes down the hall. And I turned to Larry and said, "What? No, thank you." And Larry says, "Did you get the check?" And I went, "Yeah." I said, "Did the check clear?" And he goes, "Yeah, that's your thank you."
Yeah.
Yes.
So I learned a lot of lessons about being a professional. I've never been a big seller. And I had this conversation with Dan DiDio, the publisher of DC Comics, a couple of months ago, where I said, what I bring to DC is the best work that I'm capable of doing. I always give my best.
Right.
And I bring some mainstream attention. Deathstroke's gotten a lot of mainstream attention from, newspapers, magazines. It's been written up, in a lot of instances there. Nominated for Eisner. What I don't bring is I don't bring big numbers. Black Panther didn't start. Our run on Black Panther really didn't start to take off until I had been off the book for almost a decade, and it became hot after, like Star Trek. They found it in reprints.
Yes,
and now retailers have a hard time keeping those volumes in stock.
Right.
So I figured Deathstroke will be really popular in about like the year 2030. It'll be the hottest book on this. Yeah. It takes a while to find out. I've never been somebody that sold big numbers, so I have to measure success differently by the satisfaction in the job well done, and ultimately having a volume of work that I can look back on and be proud of.
So where can people find what you're working on now, and where would you like them to look for your stuff?
Well, Vampirella is, first of all, if you're looking for me, you can find me at ChristopherPriest.com/Amazon. Okay. And that takes you to my page on Amazon. So any comics that you're looking for, they're there. Well, actually, Amazon, that takes you to my novels. Amazon 2, the number 2, Amazon 2. That takes you to the comic book page. Just Amazon takes you to when I'm writing these novels that have nothing to do with comics, and nobody wants to read that crap. So Vampirella will launch at the San Diego convention.
Yep.
Oh, awesome.
Deathstroke is running through issue 50. That'll be our big double-sized finale. That'll be coming out at the end of the year. Batman Deathstroke is a hardcover that was just released, so that's out in stores now. So there's a bunch of stuff going on there. And there's stuff I'm doing for Marvel. Shh, it's a secret. I can't even mention what it is.
Damn it.
Until they announce it. I can't. Can't.
Yeah, we got it. We've seen their ninjas around here. So
Absolutely. But there you go.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for your time, guys. Nice to meet you.